What's going on, guys? I'm Andrew.
I'm Jason.
And this is Movie Source.
Today we're doing a review of Dark Knight Rises.
Alright, so I remember seeing this film July 20th, 2012, and I was, obviously after as good as The Dark Knight was, I was so hyped, especially after, spoilers obviously, especially after we see at the end of Dark Knight where he's just flying, or excuse me, rather driving away in the Bat Pod, or that's what it was, right, the Bat Pod, and the cops were chasing him. Obviously we wanted to see this continued story. Unfortunately, you know, due to Heath Ledger's death, we didn't get to see the Joker return. And also, from what I read, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, from what I read, that, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio as the Riddler was supposed to be in it. So, you know, there was definitely some stuff that Christopher Nolan obviously had to, you know, do. He was put in a tough spot, so I definitely recognize that. And I will say this, the first time I saw this movie in theaters, and even the first 3 times, because I saw it like 5 or 6, for the first 3 times, this was by far my favorite Batman movie that I had ever seen. I've seen it maybe too many times for my own good now, maybe 20 or 30, I don't know, but each time I watch it, I'm not saying I don't like it each time more, but I just don't like it as much as Batman Begins and Dark Knight, and that doesn't make it a bad movie. It's still a good movie, for sure. There's definitely a lot more flaws in it than I found in Batman Begins and Dark Knight, because I rewatched all those as you both did, and I just didn't find myself finding as many flaws. Maybe I'm nitpicking too much, but it's just Batman Begins and Dark Knight, just for the most part, I found those films flawless. And I'm not saying that this film has to be like that to be good, but it just felt like, I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely think there are a few flaws with this movie, little things. But overall, the tone of this movie and just the way this movie is, I actually like this movie a lot. Comparing it to Dark Knight and Batman Begins is tough because those movies are amazing movies. And I think this movie is on par, just maybe a little bit below. But overall, I like this movie a lot.
I thought this movie was okay. I remember seeing it in IMAX, and if you saw it in IMAX, that was the way to see it. Yeah. But it wasn't as good as The Dark Knight, but still, the acting was good. It had some cool fight scenes, but it was boring at times. I liked it a little better than Batman Begins because it was a little more entertaining, but I felt it was more definitely a Bruce Wayne movie than a Batman movie for sure.
And I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, and I don't mind that because over the first 2 films, but especially more in Batman Begins, you really grow to love Christian Bale's portrayal of Bruce Wayne. Like, you know, obviously he's portraying a playboy millionaire, which is a billionaire rather, and that's obviously a facade. And that's not who he really is, obviously. And, you know, obviously in the second movie he still was, you know, a big impactful character, but overall I wanted to see more of that character, and we clearly got that a lot more in this film. They fleshed out a lot more things. Obviously we got to see what had happened with him, you know, in that 8 years. He's obviously, you know, he's still mourning over Rachel, understandably so. You know, that was the love of his life since he was a little kid, of course, and his best friend. So, you know, that meant a lot to him, and, you know, he's under the impression that she was going to come back to him. So, no, there's definitely a lot of good themes and a lot of good stuff in the movie.
I also really like how they show how worn down physically he is from being Batman. Like, a lot of movies don't address that, but you can see how, like, he has no cartilage in his knees and his back's all messed up. Yeah. I like how they showed that a lot.
And I like how Christopher Nolan, we didn't talk about this in the Batman Begins review, and Batman Begins, you know, he was clearly using some stuff from the comic The Long Halloween. In this one, he's using stuff from No Man's Land and also from Batman Nightfall. That's the first Bane appearance where Bane breaks Batman's back with using his knee, which happens obviously in this film.
Yeah.
But no, it's just, I love how Nolan uses the comics sometimes. Not for, hey, I'm going to use this as my story, but just, he uses, you know, certain
keeping it true to the
story.
Well,
I'm not saying he follows the comics, but he uses stuff that he finds interesting in the comics, and he uses that as a theme in his films.
I felt like, even though The Dark Knight was not one of my all-time favorite movies, I felt it was actually a movie because it was a drama. You can get invested in the characters and all that stuff. This movie, especially after The Dark Knight, was just a typical summer romp with a lot of action.
I think this movie went into a lot of the deep characteristic stuff, like you said, Bruce Wayne, and just Gotham as a whole, and Jim Gordon too. He was going through.
I would also argue with you. There's not a lot of action. There's definitely some action.
I think there's only like 3 scenes with Batman in it.
Well, yeah. There's only a couple of scenes of Batman, but I mean, overall action. There's the plane scene, of course, in the beginning. That was in IMAX. That scene is incredible.
Things I like about it is that it was a Bruce Wayne movie. And what I meant by a summer romp was not necessarily that it was an action movie, but it was hyped up, and that it was like, it wasn't like The Dark Knight, which was like a drama and you really cared for the characters.
I think that's what made this movie suffer just a tiny bit, was that The Dark Knight was so unbelievable, and this is the third
How
movie.
is it supposed to be as good?
The third movie in the series, so like everyone's expecting some final climax. And I actually thought it did a pretty good job at the end of sealing things up. I liked the way it ended, but it didn't quite live up to the hype as maybe The Dark Knight.
The biggest issue I had is, just from the world Christopher Nolan set up in the first two films. By the way, the location of Gotham City is totally changed, you can tell in this film.
Yeah.
It's Pittsburgh and LA, as opposed to the first two films they had shot in Chicago. I'd really wish they would have gone back to Chicago for the third one, because, again, the scenes where Batman's flying, trying to catch the bomb and stuff, to me, I could tell that was Pittsburgh, but that's me. It was a cool city location, but I wish they would...
different, like
I just wish they would have captured the look of the first two a little more, but that's just a nitpick. But what I didn't care for as much is, again, these are comic book movies, but the world Christopher Nolan set up for us is just such a more realistic world. And you bought it. You bought a billionaire dressing up in this suit, for spelunking, as he said in the first film, So, I mean, you buy that. But in this movie, there's just a lot of things where you're going to nitpick, at least me personally, I'm not saying you are, but where I just nitpick a little more at things where I'm like, nah, I just don't buy that in the world that he set up in the first two films, and we're going to get more into detail about that, but I guess that's my biggest flaw and issue, besides the fact that it's not as good as Batman Begins Dark Knight, but that's not why, I have my flaws and issues with it.
Well, as I said before, why did they even change the cities anyway?
I'm sure they had issues
maybe with
shooting
taxing or something.
Or,
who knows? Yeah, who knows?
It's just the way movies are made. Sometimes that stuff happens.
But yeah, like I've said, The Dark Knight felt like a realistic movie, as I've said 100 million times. It didn't just feel like this summer blockbuster. It actually felt
Definitely. Yeah.
It felt like you actually were invested.
Yeah, but overall, again, I still enjoyed Christian Bale again as Batman and Bruce Wayne. Again, I love his portrayal as Bruce Wayne. To me, so far, he's the best Bruce Wayne we've ever seen. That could change in 20 days or so, but, so far, he's my favorite, and he really embodied the role. I know he made some comments, I guess, in the last week saying he didn't, I don't know, it was like about not fleshing the character out the way he wanted or something. I don't know, but, everyone's got their own take on what they want, so I respect his opinion, but I still enjoyed what we got. It was still pretty good, obviously. And then now getting to Bane, he's played by Tom Hardy. Now, Christopher Nolan had worked with Tom Hardy just about a year or so, or a couple years previous with Inception. And, I gotta say, after the character version we got in Batman and Robin, obviously there's so much room to improve on here, but what I liked about this one, even though it's not the comic book version, because in the comic books, he's a Mexican wrestler and he's big and humongous, and in Christopher Nolan's world,
he's pretty big in this movie.
No, he is.
He's not oversized, but
but in the comics, he's a little bigger than Tom Hardy, which is But what the point
is real life.
Yeah, I was just about to say that the point I'm making in Christopher Nolan's world, this Bane makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
I personally would have liked to just get to know a little more of the backstory of Bane. Obviously, we got some tricky hidden details of it.
Yeah, they made you believe one thing and it was actually another thing, but it still was backstory.
I know, but I'm saying his true real personal. Like I obviously we know he was attacked in the prison. That's why he has to wear the mask, because otherwise it holds the pain at bay.
Mm-hmm.
They got into that, but I still wanted to learn more about the character because I really found him interesting. Because what I love about Bane, not only is he physically, I mean, you can say obviously in the comics he's way stronger, and even in this he's obviously way more agile and stronger and in better shape. But what I love about him, he's intelligent. I would say my biggest issue with Bane is sometimes it was a little muffled and hard to hear, and you can tell on the ADR.
Well, the thing about Christopher Nolan movies is that a lot of times it's very hard to hear dialogue, especially because in his score there's always these big, low, rumbly sounds, like, that kind of thing. So it makes it hard to hear his lines. The thing that got me the most about his dialogue was that it sounded like it's coming from all around versus from his mouth.
It just sucks that he was a puppet to Talia al Ghul and making her the main villain.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a twist that they went with. I mean, he was the villain for the whole movie. Just at the very end, Talia is revealed to be the true mastermind. And he was a puppet, but he still was very smart and doing all these things as a mercenary.
Yeah. I understand both. I'm in agreement with both of them. They both make very valid points. On one hand, Steven is right. Like, he was relegated more to not even, I didn't feel like they were partners. I felt like more he was working for it. Obviously we'd gotten the backstory that he was her protector as he protected her in that prison, that Bruce Wayne crawls out of in the film. And again, but Jason makes a great point. He's the one giving the speeches. He's the one putting the fear into Gotham. He's the one, turning the poor against the rich and the elite, and throwing them on the streets and trying them. So even though it's Talia's plan, someone's got to execute the plan. And Bane did that. I mean, there's no other people that work for her that could probably execute the plan
it's not like
that.
Bane is just, on puppet strings. He's doing what she wants him to do, but he's doing it very well. He's pretty evil.
Right. I would say to Steven's point, me personally, again, that doesn't. I'm just nitpicking, I guess. I would have liked the reveal maybe a little, not with like 20 minutes left in the film, maybe a little earlier, maybe 20, 30 minutes earlier, maybe, just so that way we could get a little more of the Talia character. Even though we got the backstory as a kid, I like that, and I know there's so much going on. We got to wrap up the trilogy. So much is going on. There's so many characters. I get it, but I just would have liked a little more of that. Just an earlier reveal, maybe, just so I could, get that more fleshed out. Because once the reveal did happen, now going to Steven's point, he was just taking orders. Obviously, then he goes, "But we both know I have to kill you now." So then he wasn't taking orders. So they both make points, and I agree with them both. That's all I'll say.
The problem I had with Bane being the puppet is that he was promoted to be this big character, and it really was Talia al Ghul seeking revenge for her father.
Well, that's a good point. I guess Iron Man 3 did that too, where the marketing is set to make you believe that it's all this villain, and then there's a twist. I personally don't mind twists like that. I actually like twists like that. Again, I just said I personally would have liked the twist a little earlier in the film, maybe 20, 30 minutes. That's my
just
only
so you
nitpick
can see the dynamic between both of them instead of just, one scene with them together and then she leaves and then Bane dies really quickly. That was one thing I thought. Like, I didn't mind how he died, but just the fact that it's like, okay, they made this reveal, and all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to kill you, and then Catwoman comes in on the motorcycle and shoots him.
That was so anticlimactic.
It was just so quick, and you're like, wait a minute, what? What just happened? And then he's gone for the rest of the movie.
I remember in the theaters, like, that's how he goes out? I like this character. I would have liked him to get a
I wish he had a more epic death. And also Talia's death, like, well, I didn't mind how the car went down and she got crashed or whatever, and she had that whole speech.
It's the acting.
But then her little death scene, she's just like... For like 2 seconds and she's dead.
And look, I blame that. You can blame that on the actress. I blame it also on Christopher Nolan. Like,
he's the one who allowed it to
go through. He allowed it. He watched the take. He's right there on the camera, on the monitor, watching it. So he could have clearly said, we got to shoot another take. I mean, but he did whatever. I personally would have liked it if it was. I mean, because I really do remember the first time I saw it in theater, everyone was laughing when she died because they're like, that's unbelievable. They just didn't buy it. So I get it's everyone's critique. I just would have liked, again, we're just nitpicking. That doesn't harm the story or anything. It just makes you believe you're more watching a film than rather than events occurring that's believable. So you make a good argument and point there. Absolutely. Now, we definitely got to talk about Anne Hathaway as Catwoman. Now, Anne Hathaway, when she was cast as Catwoman, got the same treatment as Heath Ledger and Michael Keaton. It's interesting, too. When DC characters are cast and people don't agree with it, they let it be known. And I remember everything about Anne Hathaway on the internet. What? You got Princess Diaries playing Catwoman? Are you kidding me? Like, I remember when I had heard that it was a choice, I had the same reaction as I had to Heath Ledger. I trust Christopher Nolan. I will see the film, and I will make my judgment after I see the film. If it's terrible, I'll let it be known. It was a terrible performance. If it was phenomenal, like it was, I will let it be known, and I'm telling you right now, she's my favorite cat. Michelle Pfeiffer was like right here, even though her makes no sense how she becomes Catwoman. Just her portrayal of Catwoman, I thought it was
okay. It fit for the movie.
Yeah, for that particular movie, I love the portrayal. But I just overall, even though we never hear her mentioned as Catwoman in the film, she's sexy, she's smart, she's a badass, dude. When she's beating up villains, you buy it, and she's smart. I love the part where the SWAT is coming in, where she made them use the cell phone. Very smart.
And she's like,
she's screaming like, ah! And like no cop wants to deal with the scream. Like, get out of here! I gotta go deal with this. She's so smart. And then from the first dialogue she had with Bruce Wayne, where she's like, "Oops, nobody told me it was uncrackable." I was like, yes, this is I buy her. She is Selena Kyle. And again, I'm so happy Anne Hathaway just shut everyone up who said she was going to be bad. Again, that's my opinion. If you think she wasn't as good, obviously that's your opinion. I just thought she was incredible in the film. In fact, I thought she stole the show, in my opinion. She was my favorite. Me personally,
not so much in the sense of like Heath Ledger stealing the show.
Oh no, I'm not. Don't twist my words.
No,
Jason.
I'm not saying that. I'm
that.
just saying she was one of my favorite characters.
Yeah,
but I think she was in with a bunch of characters.
I also mean stole the show from a perspective of everyone not only despised and wanted her to fail, but couldn't stand the thought of her as Catwoman. I just thought she stole the show, in my opinion, from that perspective, and she was my favorite character in the film. That's all I'm saying.
She was one of my favorite characters, but I still wouldn't say she stole the show because, like, I still thought Bane was great. Aside from a few things, I thought Bruce was very good. Batman, on the other hand, I thought, at least in the beginning, like the scene where he comes out, his first appearance in 8 years,
right?
And all of a sudden, that one cop guy's like, "Oh, screw Bane, let's go after Batman."
Yeah,
and he just lets Bane get away. I thought, I mean, obviously that was the point of the movie, but I was just like thinking, like, why is Batman doing that?
I thought that why can't the police go after both? I mean, like even cop says, who do you want to go after? This robber, robber, the son of the bitch who go to RV Dent. And I thought, why not go after both?
Because they've been trying to catch him for 8 years, and he wants to do what Jim Gordon could never do.
I don't feel sorry for Gordon and Batman's choice to take the fall for Dent, or like that. The whole reason that Batman feels bad is because he took the fall for Dent, or that they're allowing himself to get captured, because they didn't have to blame Batman. They could have easily blamed like the Joker or some random prisoner.
Yeah, I agree with that. They could have blamed the Joker. They just could not let Harvey Dent be the one to take the fall because they had to have that Dent Act that kept all those criminals in prison. That was one thing that confused me a little bit. Oh, just because Harvey Dent did this means they can't keep criminals in jail? Or
that was confusing.
I know he's the one that put them away, and they can't be like... But I actually really like the beginning of the movie where you see how conflicted Gordon is, and like he wants to tell the truth. He has that speech about Dent, obviously because Harvey Dent tried to kill his kid and his wife. Yeah. And he's just so, he's under a lot of
arrest.
I will
say one thing that kind of annoyed me a little bit, again, with some of my nitpicks, when Gordon, I know the reason he's got it in the pocket in the night he's at Wayne Manor, makes total sense why he would have it in the pocket. He was about to read the speech then, makes sense. The scene where he gets captured by Bane's men and he's got it in the pocket, that's a totally different night. That's not the same night. I don't think so, right?
I have to check.
I'm pretty sure it's not the same.
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay, unless
that's what I was thinking. He had the speech on him because it was in his jacket.
Okay, if I'm wrong and it's the same night, then I forgive that for being in his pocket. If it's a totally different night, which I think it is, I could be totally wrong. I think it is. If it is a different night, I have no idea why that would be in there. And one other thing that annoyed me too, when Bane is reading his speech trying to get the revolution going, why are you going to believe a terrorist reading some... How do you know that's Commissioner Gordon's thing? How do you... Oh, because it says on paper... Like, how do you prove that's Commissioner... I just didn't... That was a little real... From the world that Christopher Nolan's created in the first two movies, that was very unrealistic to me, in my opinion. Just them buying a terrorist...
Just trusting a terrorist.
I just say, Jim Gordon wrote that because he's reading it. Okay.
I guess I didn't think that through.
Yeah, but what do you think about that now? You're thinking
That's a good point. I mean, I never would have thought that through. I mean, I guess I would have thought that people would just believe that it was Jim Gordon, and I had no thoughts about Bane.
Why would you believe that? That's all I'm... that's
Well, me. I mean, I guess he was going into a lot of detail about certain things that...
For sure, but you can write your own stuff and make your own details. They weren't there in that. They don't know the story, so again...
That's true.
I felt they could have done Christopher Nolan's very sharp in writing him and his brother and David Esquire. I just felt they could have done a little better job of explaining, of starting to get the revolution going. My opinion, at least, in my 2 cents. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Now, I like this character. John Blake, right? Is this the character's name?
Yep.
Now, I like this character a lot. I really do. Just talking about the good things. He's a good cop. He's honest, trustworthy. He actually has a lot, and he's an orphan like Bruce Wayne. He's got a lot. He's kind of got a lot of Bruce Wayne and Commissioner Gordon's qualities. He's a good detective. Well, I guess you could say that's Batman too. But he's a good cop. He's honest. He's got qualities of both of them, which I love that Christopher Nolan did that. My only gripe, and again, this is more at the ending, the part about him figuring out Bruce Wayne's identity through seeing, because they both have the same mask that they wear, because they both try to hide themselves with a smile. I understand where Christopher Nolan was going for. It was ambitious, but again, according to the world that he created in the first two movies, I personally don't buy. I know Jason does not mind it as much. I just don't buy it. It's more of a nitpicky thing, but I just don't buy that's how he solved his identity. There's a lot of throwbacks in this movie, which I will say I love. Yeah, and when Lucius Fox gives Bruce the bat, and yes, Mr. Wayne, it does come in black. There's that. And also when he gives him, he's giving him rather subtext in that quote rather than just straight up telling him, like he did with Rachel, it's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me. I'm telling you I'm Bruce by saying that. So again, I love the callbacks in this. Were there any other callbacks?
Yeah, Scarecrow as the
yeah,
judge.
of course.
He's been
But
in
he was in
all the movies.
All three of them, right?
Yeah.
But he was a bigger character in this than Dark Knight. Than the Dark Knight.
Yeah, the Dark Knight, you just had that one scene in the beginning. This one, he had, I think, two scenes.
Death
But-
or exile?
I choose death.
By exile.
By exile.
Yeah, no, I
So
like that
funny.
was fun. I liked, and I like him as Scarecrow.
Yeah.
Again, nitpicking. I would have liked to see more Scarecrow, but
Yeah,
there's
You
so
could
many
say that in
things.
the Dark Knight.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there was so much going on in that.
I
film, and
like the character. It was cool they just threw him in there, but
I'm
it was
saying
cool.
blame Christopher Nolan because I like the character so much that he created. Sorry.
May I tell you one of my pet peeves about this movie?
Sure.
Yes. Why did they have to go back to the League of Shadows? I get that Heath Ledger died, but seriously, they could have done a million other stories with the third one, so they did not have to go back. They didn't have to do Joker or League of Shadows.
I would say that to answer your point, I personally would have liked the original take of Riddler and Joker with Harley Quinn. I would have loved that version. But to Christopher Nolan's point now, he knew this was the last film that they were ever going to do, so he had to wrap the trilogy.
Tie it up, yeah.
He had to tie it up in a bow. I still like this movie. I do. And again, I'm not saying that makes it a bad movie. It's just for me personally, I just love Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. It's just on a stratosphere level for me. And this movie just didn't hit that stratosphere level.
Yeah, I thought there were certain things that, like you said, we could nitpick about, but I didn't feel like most of those actually negatively affected the story or anything. It's just like little things you're like, oh, well, what did that happen or that? But like overall, I thought this movie was very good. I like it a lot.
Scores, Steven, how do you want? What
I'd
score
give this
would
a
you
7.
Now, again, for me, if we were doing this review on the night this movie came out, I might give it a 9.8 or a 9.9. After watching it 20 or 30 times and finding, again, these nitpicks that bother me. I'm not saying it should bother you. If you love this movie and the things I personally did not care for, I'm happy for it. I'm glad you enjoyed those things. But again, it's not as good as Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, which I gave very high scores to. So I'm going to go a little bit lower, and I'm actually going to match Jason with an 8 on this.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this video. If you want to tell us what you thought about this movie, you can do so in the comments section. And if you like this video, you can hit the subscribe button.
See you guys next time.